Like I'm eventually going to sell the rentals that I do own at some point in time and probably upgrade them to something bigger and better that has a better ROI, or spread that cash out. But at the end of the day, like I can't just tie my identity to one thing and say that's how it's going to work. Like you have to be willing to pivot and recognize those things like, oh, maybe this isn't working like that.
Welcome to the Top Tier Podcast, where we take you to new heights in the world of real estate, capital raising, and business entrepreneurship. Meet your hosts, Daniela and Landon, industry experts passionate about success. Join them on the Top Tier Podcast as they share real-world experiences, practical solutions, and strategies to overcome business and real estate challenges. From expert interviews to actionable advice, they aim to inspire and empower you. Subscribe now to never miss an episode. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Top Tier Podcast with Landon and Daniela. Today, we have a long-anticipated guest, Stephen Hunt. He is a local Arizona father, investor, businessman, and we're super excited to talk to him about his origin story and all of the fun things that he's currently doing.
So awesome. Thank you guys for having me on here. I am so pumped to be on the Top Tier Podcast. So thank you so much.
Dude, I'm fired up to have you here too. I know I mean, we could sit here for 3 hours and just talk through so many things. I had the luxury of having you at one of my homes up in Montana for a few nights here back in July. And you and I got to just sit and chat and get to know each other and our families. That was oh my gosh, so cool, so amazing. Yeah. And so I'm looking forward to this here to kind of just get deeper into your business and what you're doing, also where you're going too. And so, I guess to start out, really, let's kind of go all the way back a little bit to, your origin story of why real estate and where that kind of spurned from and where it's kind of started out. Like what was kind of that origin story into real estate and where it came from?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I can back it up way far when it comes to real estate. It was always something that was like top of mind for me was I got to eventually get into real estate because I knew that people that were in real estate were making a lot of money. Like it seemed like every rich person I knew happened to hold real estate and did some form of real estate in one way.
Was it something in your family?
No, I'm the only person in my family that's actually doing real estate, which is really unique, actually, right? Everyone else is in the medical field, and I'm just like not a scientific dude. I went into medical sales, and I was like, this is awful. I was like, I love sales, but I hate everything about this medically.
Oh my gosh. I can't imagine. And the pressure in medical sales is so intense. Actually, that's one thing that people always brought up. If you want to make a lot of money, go into medical sales.
That's exactly why I went into medical sales, funny enough, because I wanted to get into real estate. Like my wife and I set out a whole plan when we were 20, 21 years old. We're like, we got to be rich. Like the lifestyle we want is not a small lifestyle. And it's because we want the security. We want to be able to do anything we want with our family whenever we want. We want as much time with our family as possible. And then we're also kind of bougie people and we like nice things, right? I think a lot of us have a little bit of something that we like that's a little bougie. Yeah. So we're like, we got to be rich. I'm like, so we got to get into real estate. But how the heck do we get into real estate? Because we have no money. We're broke. We're college kids. Like, what do we do? So we sat down, we got super focused. And we were like, what makes a ton of money? And we were like, medical sales. Everybody else that we've ever met in medical sales, they're making six figures. Like we got to make as much money as possible, as fast as possible, so we can put it into real estate. And maybe we can retire one day if we start putting 20, 25% down on every single house and start saving up this huge nest egg and just work really, really hard. Like that's what we thought the vision and the goal was.
And where did you grow up?
I grew up in Arizona, so born and raised here.
Okay. I just wonder that I think about this from time to time about where people are raised. And obviously there's sphere of influence and whatnot as it relates to like you just kind of laid out from the beginning, you were ambitious and you wanted to go to the top. Not all people are raised that way. I know I grew up in a super small, sleepy town where like if you stayed in like after high school, stayed in town, you worked at 4 different places and that's it. And that was the ceiling. There was no like deeper level, like ambition and whatnot. And I feel like that's different all around the country, obviously, but someplace like Phoenix and Arizona and all this and that. I mean, I know personally having now lived there for 6 years, like, and truthfully, that's where my real estate organically developed that's where the fireworks started getting around doers and like entrepreneurs and owners. I mean, you're doing all sorts of things. You belong to various, real estate groups and various things that you're going about. It's just cool to see. I'm now being around it because I had those same ambitions, and I don't know where it came from for me, coming from my
Mhm.
sleepy little town. So it's just interesting to hear like you kind of grew up around it. It was like that was the way.
Yeah, and it was and it wasn't. So I got really lucky in a few ways. I consider myself lucky, at least in a few ways of that, because my parents were divorced and I got to see both sides of the track is really the way that I describe it. Now, keep in mind, growing up in Arizona, Arizona was not what Arizona was 30 years ago. Like in Chandler, Arizona, which is one of the hottest markets in the state of Arizona for real estate, in Gilbert, that was all farmland. I was actually one of the first houses in Chandler, Arizona that was developed. We were the first house in the neighborhood. It looked out to all these cornfields. Now everything's completely developed and it's all over the place. So Arizona was a lot smaller. We've grown so rapidly, but with my parents being divorced, I say got to grow up on both sides of the track, and I look at that as
Mhm.
a blessing because my mom was the one that was the struggling single mom, right? She worked
Yeah.
multiple jobs, she worked her butt off, and we were always, stressed out, or she was always stressed out, I should say, to pay the bills, and she was doing whatever she could just to get by, type of a situation. But she made everything so fun and everything was just so great. And then my dad, on the other hand, on that side of that he lived the luxurious lifestyle, if you will. He made a lot of money. My stepmom is a doctor. She did really well. They had their own private practice, but they weren't happy. Like they made a ton of money, but they weren't happy. So I almost associated rich people with unhappiness because they were working so hard or whatever they were doing, and that if you didn't make a lot of money, you had more quality of life. Obviously, my viewpoint on that has changed completely, but I at least got to see what the lifestyles and the ease of this lifestyle is for people that made a ton of money. I never got any handouts. I was never given money. I was never given anything to get started or anything like that. But just being able to see it and experience it, I think also opens up your eyes to so much to see what's actually possible.
Totally, and I'm in complete alignment with that. I mean, I forget who shared this story. I know I heard it on a podcast with Chris Will X is his name on Instagram. Amazing,
Love it.
but he talks about how this American travels down to some coastline in Mexico and sees a fisherman come in on his boat to the dock and has this fish and he's like, "Oh my gosh, like you have some amazing fish. Can I buy some from you?" "Yeah, totally. You can buy some from me." And the American then goes, "Dude, how often do you do this?" He's like, "Every day." And then he's like, "Well, why aren't we opening up a cannery? Why aren't we building this business? Like, if you can do this, you can do so many different things. We can make so much money with the fish here if you're the only fisherman." And then he goes, "Because why at the end? Then after I open the cannery and I make all that money, I get to do what? Come back here and just go fish every day again?" And
Right.
so that concept is real, and I balance that from time to time too. Is like, what am I chasing? What am I going toward? I'm already golfing as much as I want right now, which is
Hmm.
amazing. That's my fishing, if you will. And so for you, like, how are you blending your experiences in your childhood from rich is unhappy to living a life of fulfillment with your beautiful family and happiness while attaining wealth and growing in all those aspects of things?
That's a really good question. I think on our end, with Angel and I, we communicate a ton. I mean, we talk about everything. We talk about how we're feeling. We talk about when is too much too much. Are we pushing ourselves too
Mhm.
hard? When do we have to dial it back? Are we enjoying the process? And I think we found this really fine line of enjoying the process of what we're doing and making sure that we're in alignment at all times. As soon as it starts to become too stressful, you start to not enjoy it. And when you start to feel too out of control, you start to not enjoy it. So as soon as those feelings start to creep in, we go, okay, do we need to remove something? Do we need to put a new person in place to help us out with this? Like what needs to happen so that we can take control of our quality of life a little bit more? And it's not to say that things are ever perfect. Like we're constantly working on that, and we constantly go through these valleys and these peaks of, oh my gosh, we're getting everything figured out. I'll give you a great example. We just went to HostCon in Houston. That was 2 weeks ago. And that was one of the first trips I've gone on where our team handled literally everything. Like I was like, "Oh my gosh." Like everything was handled. I didn't have to respond to anything. I didn't have to open up an email. I don't have to do anything. Like everything was handled. This is so great. And then you come back and then you realize that there are some additional new problems that you're running into and you're like, "Oh my gosh, we have to restructure everything. We have to go through all this new stuff." So you go through these valleys and these peaks, but it's all a part of the game. So as long as we're enjoying the process of what that
Yep.
is, it's great. But if you're not, then you're like, okay, now I'm killing myself for what reason? Like, what am I truly trying to achieve here? You know?
Right.
So many things that in the course of the last few minutes, I just want to pull out really quickly. And that's one, you got married really young. And
Relatively young.
it's hard to grow in marriage and be ambitious and to be
Mhm.
on the same page as your partner. So that level of just remaining locked in step with your partner, I find that when couples do that, their momentum, their snowball effect, it happens so much quicker and it makes the valleys and the peaks so much easier to process. I'm thinking to myself, like, I can't even imagine what you guys have gone through in the last 8 years since
Mhm.
you started medical sales and you're like, how do we make this happen? We want to make this happen so badly. I know you have a really young daughter right now. I know she's
Mhm.
she's a little baby. And I'm going in that time span. You just told me you left and you have a company running in the background. It's like a lot has happened. A lot has
So
happened.
much. Goodness gracious, so much has happened. I have a terrible habit too of like some would say it's a terrible habit, some would say, yeah, it's the right way to do things of like I can't walk where I'm going, I have to be sprinting where I'm going. So I'm like, if there's a goal I'm after or a target that I'm trying to hit, I'm like, well, it's all hands on deck. My full attention, my full focus is going into this one thing, and we're gonna rally around this and we're gonna go just straight after it. Like it's we're gonna accomplish this and then it starts to become okay and now what's the next thing, and it's usually every 12 to 18 months I feel like you're like okay this is starting to run now, like this is started to get its legs, let's start doing something else.
That's the beauty of being an entrepreneur and
I
growing a
love it.
business where you can go, cool, like I have my assets are stabilized. Now I'm going to build a vertical, like a property management company, and I'm
Yeah.
going to stabilize this. And then now I'm interested in doing this. And I'm going to focus on this. And I feel like that was something that I always really struggled with in my 20s. I kept thinking to myself, like, I'm so ambitious. I want so much. I want it. I want it. When I was little, people used to go, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was like, I want to be a CEO. They were like,
Yeah.
I'm
Same.
like, yeah, I was weird like
Same.
that. It's okay, right? Now
Same.
we're around a bunch of like-minded people. It's like we all said the same thing. But in my 20s, I would get to a really wonderful place in my career, and 2 years later, I'd be miserable. Just like,
Mm-hmm.
why am I stuck here? There's a ceiling over my head. I feel suffocated. Like I can't. I need to be in a place where there is no ceiling. Just the feeling of not having a financial ceiling where I'm going, are you telling me that the most money I'm ever going to make is this? And I have to wait until I'm 62 years old to qualify for that position because everyone is just old? Like, this is terrible. And
Awful.
I'm like, I can't do this. So so, it's so cool to hear for everyone
It
listening.
is. You know, and it's a ceiling, not even just the financial ceiling of corporate America that killed me so much. It was also the self-development ceiling that came along with corporate America. So when my wife and I both got into corporate and we finished up college, all that stuff, I mean, it was all hands on deck for her and I to be like, we have to master sales. We have to become excellent communicators. We have to become excellent at leadership. We have to become excellent at sales so we can just dominate this entire space, because we also thought that was the caliber of people that we were going to be dealing with in corporate America. Like our expectations were now I'm looking at it, I'm like, I'm trying to compete against the 0.001% in the world is what I've now realized. But I thought that's where everybody was going to be at getting into corporate. So we had these almost unrealistic expectations. So we trained so much, we practiced, we role played all the time together. We went on walks and talked about the sales books we were reading. Like we swapped books. Like we went so hard studying and practicing and doing everything we could to master those crafts. And then you get into corporate and you're like, wait a minute, nobody really like gives a shit here. Like what is actually going, this is all make believe, this is all fugazi, like everyone's just trying to get through the day. I'm like, I'm over here and I took this way too seriously, like I'm now feeling capped. I now know more about leadership, sales development, all this kind of stuff than my managers or their managers or their managers. There's a book called The Peter Principle, and it talks about rising to the level of your incompetencies. And that's the way I view all of corporate America is the people that got into the roles that they're in, the majority of the time, have just rose to the level of their incompetencies. And they're usually not going to make it much further past that. And most of them don't really care to make it much past that. So that's what would eat me alive. It wasn't even just the financial aspect of it. Because I always thought to myself, I'm like, if I want to make more money, I could do a side hustle. I could start a business. I could do something else. But it was also the skill set cap that I was realizing I was running into. I was like, oh my gosh, like this served a purpose. This served what I needed at this point in time. But now I need to figure out a way to grow more. And for me, that was entrepreneurship because Now you're doing everything from scratch. You're taking some of those skills, you're applying them to entrepreneurship, but there's so much more that you have to learn about.
Yeah.
Okay. So then you guys, this is so cool. I can't even imagine. Do you like having somebody in your life that young where you guys can pour into each other and then you also are married? It's like, okay, that's so
It's a
amazing.
unicorn. Yeah, it's a unicorn.
So
Unicorn.
incredibly blessed. Truly so incredibly blessed. Like when I met Angel, she was all about like being bougie. She's like, we got to get money. And I was like, I got it. But we wanted money for different reasons, her and I. So we finally found this middle ground where we were like, we have to start working towards something. And one day I made her read Rich Dad Poor Dad
So
by
good.
Robert Kiyosaki, right? Such a good book. And she read that whole book in one day. And she was like, oh my God, I get it. I see where you're trying to go with the things that we're trying to do. Like, let's do this together. So then it just became we'd order 10, 12 different sales books, 10, 12 different leadership books, and we would each read one. And every night we would go for a walk for 2 hours in the most luxurious neighborhoods in Arizona, just dreaming, right? We want that house. Oh my gosh, I love this finish. But we would talk about the books that we were reading or listening to throughout the day. And then we would swap books every single time. So that way I could then read the book that she was just reading and we could see how each other perceived it. So it just created this really, really deep connection to where like we just get each other very, very deeply in that way. So nothing ever feels like a risk. Nothing ever feels like it's too much, right? Because we always feel like we have each other's back and like we're the only two people that truly get each other. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, but also rare
Yes.
to that level, right? So then, okay, let's rewind a little bit. And I'm curious, you guys are doing this. You're going on your walks, you're reading these books, you're dealing with your corporate America realizations. What was the first move in real estate that you made? And since everything is with Angel is so close, like how did you guys mull that over?
Yeah. Great question. Um, So the way that we ended up getting into real estate, I consumed so much freaking content on real estate because I was like, I gotta know this like the back of my hand. We were working our way up in corporate sales. We were like 24, 25. She was 24, I was 25. She's a year younger than me. And then out of nowhere, April Giuliano, who is Angel's stepsister, so my stepsister-in-law, comes into town. She lives in Florida. So she flies out to Arizona. We don't know she's coming out here. And she's like, hey, guys, I'm in Gilbert right now visiting. I'm meeting this guy, Pace Morby. I'm getting into real estate and just wanted to let you guys know that I'm here. And we're like, wait a minute. No, come on over. Come over to our house. Like, what are you talking about? We're trying to get into real estate. Let's talk about this. So she goes and she's one of the first students to sign up for the Sub 2 mentorship.
Wow.
And yeah, so she's like breaking everything down. She's like, no, we're going to get people in the Philippines to make these cold calls. And you don't need any money to buy the real estate. And I was like, this is like black magic, scammy stuff. Like, I don't know. Like, you're going to hire people from the Philippines. Like, I don't know. Like, this doesn't make any sense. So for a full year, we talked about it. And she loved joining the mentorship. And she was just absolutely crushing. She did one deal. One of her wholesale deals that she did was a $400,000 deal in her first year. So she just completely crushed, and we just watched this for a full year, and we're like, hold on,
Wow.
maybe there's something to this. So we ended up calling and going ahead and getting into Sub 2, and that was really what started to do everything, like started to really give us that push, because now all of a sudden we were surrounded by a community. We were surrounded by people that were actually doing deals, and that was honestly one of the biggest game changers of our entire lives was joining that mentorship.
I think it was for all of us probably.
Yeah.
I would say so. It
Yeah.
changed all of our lives.
Well, what's
Like, there's
interesting
no
too
going
is that
back now.
it puts us all, you know, I've been in that same mentorship now with you guys for now a year and a half. And I look back and reflect on who I was when I joined. And I even hesitated joining
Me
because
too.
of the barrier of entry and all these different things, not knowing. And I now say I would have paid double to join just from the relationships I've built, not only just the money I've made and the businesses I've created and built and purchased and all these different things, but moreover, who I've became in that process. And then also
Mhm.
too, like the relationships that have spurned out of it is, yeah, I paid a fee to get into a smaller room, but that smaller room are around people who also paid that same fee to get in there, that are like-minded, that want to do the thing. And so it's nice to be around that level of people who want to do real estate but need structure, need levels of guidance and kickstarting. And now I couldn't imagine my life having not joined. that
Oh,
group and that mentorship. And I'm sure that's going to continue to evolve and develop. I know, Stephen, you're now part of Owners Club and you're going to join multiple other mentorships throughout the rest of your life and other things that you're going to
totally.
do, much like I am. And so it's very much on that same track and wavelength as proof of concept. Like that's really sub two is my first, I'll say, other than like in the fitness space with CrossFit and whatnot, but I would say like um, in real estate was my first proof of concept of spending a large chunk of money to get into a room, a educational system, having a mentor, and getting the true proof that it does work. That if you pay to get in the room, you're gonna no matter. I mean, it depends on what you take and do with it, obviously, right? Because I mean, there's 14,000 members as we sit here right now. And if we're honest, how many of those are actively doing anything? And so
Hmm.
you still have to do the thing, but it's still a matter of I get to be in a room around Stephen Hunt that everyone here in the audience is going to hear all the things that you're doing and who you've became and what you're doing now and owning a property management company, going to be buying other businesses, has a bustling fix and flip company, like all these different
Hmm.
things. And so, well, guess what? I want to be around that person. Do I want to fix and flip right now? No, but I might be in the future. And having him in the corner that I can talk to, someone like Daniela, like who ran a business day to day for years, commercial broker in the state of California, all this. I want to be around that person to just ask questions. Now her and I are going off and we're purchasing self-storage facilities together. Like it's so beautiful,
So
like who
cool.
you meet through this process. And so it just, anyway, I had to share
I've
that.
met some phenomenal partners all through this mentorship. Like I've made so much money through this mentorship because of the people that I met. Like when I look back at it, I'm like, okay, doing my first deal, I found my first crew through this mentorship. My current crew, I found essentially through this mentorship. I found all my private money lenders for the most part through this mentorship. I found out how to underwrite a deal through this mentorship. Like
Yep.
every resource that I possibly needed to be successful, there was somebody there willing to help. I was the one that took the action to go seek them out and start interviewing people and saying, hey, let's see if this person knows what they're talking about. But at the end of the day, some of us have to just take risks and just
Yep.
say, okay, I'm going to trust your word on this, and you go for it. But you have every single resource readily available to you. There's almost nothing that doesn't exist in that mentorship
Yeah.
when it comes to real estate or business buying or really anything entrepreneurial.
So you joined the mentorship. That's your first
Hmm.
inkling into real estate. Now, at that time, did you own your primary home? Did you own a rental home or anything? Or had you done a wholesale deal? Or I guess what was your experience heading into that?
Yeah, I had done 0 deals, and
Okay.
I had this idea of like, okay, I'm gonna join this mentorship so I can buy 10 rental properties. I think everybody has a similar story to this. It's like I'm gonna buy 10 rental properties, and now all of a sudden I'm gonna be financially free, and like I did it. Awesome. That's just like not the case.
No.
However, we'll talk about that more. I joined the mentorship, and what's going on at that time is Pace is doing a series called Zero to Hero. He had
Mhm.
just come out with it. I was going through it live at the same time. Like everyone, like this is COVID time frame too, so everyone's like so bought into all the challenges. On top of it, like the engagement is through the roof because nobody has literally anything else to do.
Yeah.
Like it's COVID. Like we're all at home. Angel was at home with her job. I was at home with my job. So I was like, oh, let's just do this. So he was doing Zero to Hero, and I did that whole program. I got VAs. I did all the things that were needed to start building out essentially a wholesale operation. Even though I was the one that was wanting to buy them and do fix and flips and that kind of stuff. And I really wasn't getting anything from it, and that's because I still had my W-2. I just wasn't dedicating the time that I needed to. So I kept that going for several months. To put a time frame on this was August. We joined at the end of August 2022, and by the time December rolled around, I was like, this is not working for us. We got to figure out something different. Like if we're going to do real estate, I need to go all in on real estate. Like I need to have this be my only focus, because if I'm pulled away from my job, if I'm doing all this other stuff, like I just need to dial in and be directly focused on this one thing for a period of time. And I was going through this thing with my job where we agreed to a mutual separation, right? Some people are like, "Oh, you got fired." I'm like, "It was a mutual separation. I got a severance package." Um, and that January, I decided to cut off all of that marketing and do something that just worked for me and try to figure out a different way to really approach real estate. And that's when I really started getting a lot more momentum in the space of doing real estate, was finding my own way to find properties and finding my own way to do this whole thing. And I think that's what everybody should focus on, is trying to figure out what works best for you. If that's building a small team, if that's doing VAs, whatever ends up working for you, stick to that thing.
Bro, our
Mhm.
stories are so aligned because I joined 6 months after you in January
Hmm.
of 2023, the same mentorship. And I too started in the recordings of Zero to Hero. I don't think you know this. I
I
started in
don't know
Zero
this.
to Hero recordings, and I go, I'm gonna do the thing. And I hired 3 VAs out of Costa Rica.
Ooh.
I had my Podio CRM all built
Yeah.
out. I bought all the good leads. I figured out all the little systems, and I was doing about $4,000 a month in spend. Uh,
Oh God.
Same. Same.
and mind
No,
you,
no.
I remember distinctly like the VA company that I went through was a referral from someone else, and um, I couldn't manage the VA, so it was working with an agency, so I never knew who the VAs were, but I would get the call recordings. And I want you guys to hear this loud and clear. It's so hilarious. And fast forward to Daniela will laugh so hard at this.
God.
I did one deal out of those VAs in 4 months. Ended up being a cash deal, a church in Arizona off Yuma Avenue, Stephen,
Oh
and
my
in
gosh.
the hood. And all the other leads that I had, I was too afraid to call them.
Oh
I'm not
no.
kidding
That
you.
is so funny.
So I was like, but then I
God.
also too, I wasn't I wasn't mature enough to realize and understand how to train VAs, how to look at the data, how to manage the leads. And honestly, like I wish I could take my skill sets now to call those sellers and have those conversations. But then also too, I figured out that they were planting warm leads in my system because they were guaranteeing 2 warm leads a day and all these little things and blah, 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 whatever. Ended up firing them, made my money back through that one assignment, that cash deal, broke even. And 1 month later, I did my first sub 2 deal. I still own it today. It's a long-term rental property, but that's when I had my mind blown because I found that property on market, zero marketing dollars. I called the agent, I had the conversation with the seller, and I closed it. And so I was like, all right,
Mhm.
this is my redneck way of doing it. I'll do it myself, and then I'll build a team around that that'll do it for me, and then we'll just go that way. And that's what I did. And now it's spurned to, I think, yeah, as of yesterday with Pahrump, Daniela, I'll have closed my 70th creative deal
Heck yeah.
year and a half. Pretty wild. And
That's
so
Crazy.
it's insane just the journey through that is I had to go through that failure with the VA systems. It's such a good memory to have, but it's so crazy
Oh,
how
so
you and I
good.
are aligned on that startup. I had no idea that you did that either.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, and I very similar stories to you as well, and even coming from sales, I was a little bit nervous, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like, I'm gonna talk to the seller, like, I don't wanna offend them." I'm so used to corporate where, like, everyone's so sensitive and touchy with
mm,
everything you say too, that I was coming off too corporate to the sellers, and they were
Yeah.
like, "You kinda seem like some, like, slick Willy snake oil, like, talking dude," and I'm like, "No, no, I'm here to help you," and they're like, "Yeah, whatever." So it was funny, so I was finally gonna get this deal, and it was a phenomenal deal that I had all put together, and it was a portfolio. I was like, I'm going to buy a portfolio deal for my first deal ever. Oh my gosh. It was this woman. Her name's June Lehman. And I was like, this is so great. They were all going to be 0% interest, like 5% down. We had the capital for it. They were ready to go. They already had tenants in place, all this stuff. She was just sick and yada, yada. And she owned about 80 houses. And these were her last 4 or 5 houses that she owned at that time. She had sold all the others off. So I'm like telling Angel about this one night, and I'm like, "You'll never believe it. Like, we're gonna get these houses. It's so awesome. I'm gonna go over there tomorrow and give her the contracts. It's so great." And we're watching Sunday service with Pace, and Pace starts talking about these deals that he's buying, and he pulls out 4 or 5 contracts, paper contracts, and he starts reading off the addresses. And
wait a minute.
I'm like, those are our deals. I was like, how the hell did he get those deals? I'm like, wait a minute, I'm going there tomorrow to get these contracts signed. So they literally swooped in even before that. And I was like, dang, this is so competitive. And that's when I realized I was also just competing with everybody else with doing that form of marketing and spend and everything. I'm like, this is what everybody's throwing money into. So we're all getting the same things,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. That is one. Oh gosh, that's such a hard pill, but also, at the same time, so necessary for that progression. If I spent all my time doing the challenges and doing the this, doing the that, we would never be growing our businesses.
Oh, yeah.
Like we would never be actually working on the business or working ourselves out of the business. So,
Hmm.
there comes a time and a place for those things. And then there comes a time and the place to put on the blinders back on. And like that focus that you're talking about, where it's like, I have to get to this thing. And I've been pregnant with my third here. I have 3. 5 and under. And I
Mm,
have still never met Landon, never met Chris, never met Rinda or Heather Cadu, my business partners, because I've never gone to an event. And there's a part of me that's like, I'm so disciplined in this way where I'm going, I don't deserve it yet. Even
mhm.
though there's, even
Mm.
though there is, that's a mindset issue for sure. That's a limitation because you make relationships in person and there's so many more opportunities. But there's like, I'm just like, I need to do this thing so that when I do go to an in-person event, I can capitalize on exactly why I'm there and go after the people that I really want to go after. Because when I first started going to these networking events, it was like, we're just all there, not knowing what we're doing, shooting the shit, just totally lost. Now, when I make the time to go to a networking event, I'm like laser. I'm like, I
Yeah,
have 10 people I need to hit today. And if I'm sitting here having this conversation where I'm just going like, I can't right now. It was so great to meet you, but like, I got to go talk to that guy.
totally. Oh, I totally feel that too. I started off by going to every single event and trying to get really plugged into my local network of people. But after I started doing deals, I was like, I need to focus on this. Like, I just need to double down here. And when I need things, when I'm looking to grow, I'll get myself re-involved in everything that's going on out here. But I'm the same way as you in that sense where I'm like, okay, cool. Now that I figured out what works for me, like I need to go ahead and just like double down on this thing. And then eventually I can go back out more into the public eye of just meeting new people and seeing what I need. But I'm like, I know what I have to do. So why would I not just double down on what I have to do right now? You know?
Oh,
Yeah, I think it's hard for a lot of people to be that disciplined because it's more fun to go to events and conferences and all the things and talk about what you want to do. It's
Yeah.
really
It
I'm
feels
such a
good.
it does. And you're sitting there around like-minded people and you get inspired and you hear new ideas and then shiny object. There's a
Mhm.
carrot in front of you. And I am like a hardcore hormosiast. Like if my dad were a young man, he'd be just like Alex. And it's like it just is what it is, man. It's black and white. You either do the work and you make money and you get the snowball or you don't.
Totally.
There's no
Totally. You have to put it in. You have to do it. And then eventually you go out there and you can talk about it. You're so much more valuable to go out to these meetups when you've actually done the things and you can talk to those things and you can help guide people in those situations. You'll get so much more buy-in and such deeper relationships from everybody if you're the one doing the things. Like I get to go to meetups now where I've flipped more properties than pretty much everybody there, or hold more properties more than pretty much everyone there, or built multiple businesses and other people are just getting started. So you become this source, and these people want to add value to your lives because you're pouring into them and adding value to their lives. Versus us all just sitting around being like, I can't wait till I get my first rental. Neither can I. I can't wait. Feels so
Yeah,
good to talk about this. And I'm like, let's focus on doing the thing and taking the steps to make that happen. So that way we actually have problems to solve. We have an actual like ability to grow here versus just talking about it. Because I go to meetups and I'll be real. Like even now, 3 years later, like it's the same people at the meetups and they still haven't done deals.
yep. Yep.
that's hard
Totally.
because we're putting ourselves in that room too. And it's
Hmm.
our time too. So if I could have spent that 2 hours doing another podcast, right? Doing 5 more informational interviews, like reaching out to people that I know are going to help me grow in my space. And I go to something and I'm back in the room of tire kickers and I'm going, no, no, no. I left this room. I went down the hall. You know, I need
Hmm.
to be in down the hall room. And if this isn't that, that's okay. And it's like almost not about that division, right? Of who's
Yeah.
doing stuff, who's not. It's more about getting to a place where you don't want to sit and listen anymore, and you only want to be around people that are doing and creating problems and solving problems because you need that push.
Yes. Yeah, if there's a meetup where there's some really cool information about Section 8 or something that I'm wanting to learn more about, and it's going to be an easy button for me to go listen to the speaker there because they've been doing it for years, I'll go to those for sure. But at the end of the day, too, I think all of us have come to this point where it's like we have to put ourselves into different rooms, probably more exclusive rooms that we're most likely going to have to pay for in order to get that next level of people that are interacting and meeting, because these meetups still happen the same way they happen when you're a newbie as they do when you're somebody that has a 9-figure business. People are still getting together and doing masterminds and they're still talking through their problems. They're just bigger problems. And those are the rooms now that we're like, okay, how do we spend more time in these rooms over here? So that way we're not, it's not that I don't want to help people, but I also still want to help myself, because at the end of the day, if we help ourselves, we have the ability to help more people.
Totally. And I mean there's so much alignment there. And I mean, I know you know this, but over the past now year, I started, I I put together a real estate meetup in Arizona called the Arizona Power Hour. And
Yeah.
it was until June of this year when my family and I took off. We're up here in Oregon right now. Um, it was until then. We did it for like 9 months up there. And then when I immediately got here, preluding actually to arriving here, I reached out to local Facebook groups to kind of see what type of communities out here from a real estate standpoint to start tapping in. Realized there was nothing. I started to put together a meetup. So every Tuesday I put together a meetup because I've always believed too, very similar to what you said, is like, there's so many people in my life that have impacted me so greatly to allow me to achieve various dreams, goals, aspirations. And it's my service, it's my obligation, my responsibility to climb the ladder myself and then
Mhm.
also reach back down and help someone up. And
Mhm.
so in these meetups that I'm doing, I'm getting people in the room that, we keep it pretty intimate, 15 to 20 people at most, and inspiring people. But what it also is doing for me too is there's various forms of branding, identity. It's also helping others too to get their first deal. It's creating our own lead generation that if they need help, they have someone to go to for that, of all those things. And then also it allows me the opportunity to practice speaking,
Yep.
practice talking,
Huge.
and working with those people. And so there's so many benefits to all different levels of meetups, no doubt. Like those high end meetups and masterminds, like we put together in person masterminds for people around the country. They fly in and stay at the Airbnb and spend thousands of dollars to be in that room with the 5 people that are going to help take them to the next level. Sure, we do those as well too. And I just don't want to take for granted those weekly meetups that are also for
Yeah.
accountability and discipline and
Yep.
consistency and all those things too. But undoubtedly, like, I would not be who I am without real estate meetups. I remember my first meetup I went to, my hand was trembling. It was a bigger
Yep.
pocket meetup. And I go, I have no value to provide anyone at this meetup, but I'm going to show up.
Yeah.
And I've met some of my best friends out of that meetup. But you hit the nail on the freaking head, Stephen, is that I went to that meetup here a couple of months ago, and those same people are still going, and they're in the same exact position, is that they go there to drink the beer and just talk about their dreams and their goals and what they're going to do. And they don't
Yeah.
do anything. And
Well,
so,
the
yeah,
cool thing too, and I don't mean to cut you off there as well, about the way that you are doing meetups, Landon, it's so much different because A,
yeah,
you're the one that's in control of this. You're personally developing from this, right?
yep,
And then on top of that, you have a meetup that is one of the main purposes of your meetup is to take action. It's like an action taking meetup. It's not a, hey, let's talk and have some drinks and, fantasize about what deal we're going to get one of these days, hopefully, maybe.
right, right,
It's like, hey, we're calling people and we have the opportunity to get a deal tonight, right now, if somebody can get the right deal, if somebody can get a hold of the right person. Like
yep.
we can do that right here and all of us can watch it all go down. Like let's encourage each other in this area. You know what I mean?
Yep, do I totally do, and that's precisely why I structure it that way. There's levels of networking, and I do benefit from those nowadays. But um, I also know me showing up to a meetup when I didn't have any, so let's say, skill sets or valuable things that I can provide. Like I just needed to take action. I needed to start doing something to work towards a goal. And so when these people come over to I've hosted at my Airbnbs, I've had other, public locations where we could host it for free to keep the costs low. And these people show up and get inspired. And what do you know? Like I've done so many deals with these people in these rooms. I currently, as we sit here right now, I have $120,000 out on a lend that I was the lead magnet for the deal. So someone approached me, is like, hey, I need $100,000 or $120,000 for this 30-day deal. Do you have that, or do you know someone? I'm like, yeah, I know someone, because I have 2 people at my meetup that are like, hey, we're liquid. We want to do a gator lending deal. If you know of anything, we don't have any marketing or lead generation. I literally put them in the same room together, and I get a connection fee out of that whole thing. So we've done it's beautiful in that regard, and you build relationships and all those aspects of things. So you did the zero to hero, Stephen, and in January you quit the W-2, and now
Yeah.
you're all in on real estate. So what transition did you make there? Because there's so many nuggets there as it relates to, I'm sure, deeper level stuff with Angel of like committing to this full time. I know you
Mhm.
had your severance and all those aspects of things, so that runway definitely helps. I've heard people cash out their 401ks to build these runways to help. But so January's here of 2023, same month I
Mhm.
joined. What did the next 3 months look like for you? What did you change, and what did you accomplish in that first 5 months, 3 months?
Yeah. Yeah, so in that period of time, I turned off all the marketing that we had going on. I was like, "No more marketing spend going towards this. Like, I need a week or 2 to basically just sit by myself and be like, 'What am I gonna do?'" And so I just reverse engineered it. I go, "Okay, who do I love serving the most? What are some big economic problems?" I'm an e-com nerd as well. Like, I love understanding what's going on economically in the country, in the world, all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, so what are some big issues that we're running into economically? Who are my favorite sellers to work with? Like what does that look like? Who can I serve? And I wanted to get really niched and really targeted on just one specific thing. And so that thing for me was okay, helping elderly people retire. Because the majority of seniors in America have less than $1,000 to their name, and then 60% of that majority wouldn't know where to find $400 if they needed it. The average cost of senior living in the state of Arizona is about $8,500 a month. So we have this huge issue where nobody can afford the cost of senior care, and then nobody has any money. However, 88% of seniors in America own their home free and clear because they bought these houses for 20, 30, $40,000 back in the day, back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, that they've paid them off. That's what they were taught to do, not to save, not to invest, but hey, get your home paid off. That's the way that you're going to do it. So what I did was is I actually productized all the ways that you can transact real estate. So you have your seller financing, you have your subject to. I rebranded all of them, the cash deals, novations. I rebranded absolutely everything, and I productized it and turned it into a service. And I started going to assisted living communities with brochures that I would print out with my list of services that I can do to help their patients afford long-term care. And through that, I found this being a huge business solution as well for the assisted living communities, for the hospitals that I was working with, the memory care facilities I was working with, because their conversion rate on average was 6 to 9 months to get a patient to get from point A to point B, meaning their house to their community or facility. Or it was taking people a year to get out of the hospital because they didn't have the money to get out of the hospital and into the assisted living community. So now the hospital's losing money by having somebody in that bed. So as I'm really understanding all of this, I really shifted this to become that business solution for these organizations, as well as helping seniors afford long-term care. And that's exactly what we did. And went and did my first pitch closer to, I'd say, beginning of February after I built this whole thing out, and then ended up getting our first lead a week later, closed on that the very first week of March. And that was our first deal that we had ever got. And it was this proof of concept of like, oh my gosh, this works. Like, I no longer have to spend money on marketing. I have all of these organizations that are spending millions of dollars a month on marketing, and I can get them to send me the leads that they're generating. That's how we're going to do this. And my credibility is through the roof when I go and meet with these sellers. It's an urgent situation. They need somebody to help them. And then I was also referred by that assisted living community or the hospital. So my credibility from day one is already where it needs to be when I'm meeting with them.
That's so cool. That is so cool, man.
Super
Like, I love
clever.
you took your corporate, you almost blended. It was almost like a transitionary blend between sales, your corporate background of medical sales,
Hmm.
and your ability. I think it's hilarious. You created a pamphlet and productized all these different services and offerings
But
of what
that's
you do.
like, can you imagine going in with something like that? I
You're
mean,
dressed nice. You have a name badge
genius.
on, like
Yeah.
you're a professional and you get to
Yep.
be a
Yes,
professional.
Yep.
yes,
So your
yes.
first deal, was it, you said, was it seller financing?
It was not seller financing, it was a cash deal, but I offered seller financing on it. So I always pitch with 3 different pitches, and I'm like, "Which one do you think makes the most sense for you?" I let them choose. At that situation, they wanted a cash deal. I had no idea what I was doing. Like, I'd never done a deal yet, so this is my first deal ever. So I'm like, "I think this is the right cash amount," you know what I mean? Like, in my mind. And they ended up saying yes. We signed the contract the same day that we went to meet them.
Wow.
And I was like, "Wow, this is crazy." And it was a great deal. We actually still hold that deal to this day.
Oh, wow.
So is that like your okay, what was the active income piece? Because I always feel like when people leave the W-2, they
Mhm.
have to create active income pretty quickly. We have this thing in our mind. It's like, if I just could leave my W-2 and focus on accumulating properties, like you said, I get to 10 and then I pay all my bills and everything's great, but it never works like that
No.
because long-term rentals are an active business. They are more passive, but they need active income. They need that active income support. So at what point did you go, okay, I now know how to get the properties that I need to hold, but how do I support those investments with active income?
That's a lesson I didn't learn for a full year And I
Wow.
bought every single house and held on to every single house. I had like 23 houses in the portfolio that first year from doing that strategy, all perfect BRRRR deals or seller finance deals. Just like, I was like, my ego loved it, by the way. I was like, this is so freaking cool. I own 10 million plus dollars worth of real estate. Like, I thought it was so cool. And that's when I got hit with that like, oh shit moment where like 7 of the houses ended up having vacancies and repairs and all these things happened like at the beginning of 2023. And I was like, oh shit, like now I need to figure something out. I was blessed though. Keep in mind, like if we back up the story again, like my wife and I had the same exact target goal of both
Mhm.
getting into medical sales. So by the time I was leaving to do real estate on our own, we were making between $400,000 to $500,000 a year between the both of us in our mid 20s, and that was the whole goal behind it. So when I left, my wife was still making 250 a year doing medical sales. So she
Fantastic.
was that support to begin with. So we could live off of everything that she was bringing in. We could still live the same lifestyle. We just weren't saving as much money. Instead, we were buying properties, which to me, I thought was a fantastic trade off. I was cool with that because we had so much equity in the BRRRR deals and the things that we were doing. But fast forwarding it, yeah, I held like 23 of those houses and ended up having to make the decision to go, okay, get your ego out of the way. Let's sell off some of these. We're sitting at about 17 houses right now. Yep, officially 17, actually. We just closed this other refi. So sitting at 17 houses now. That's a solid number. And outside of that, now we're like, hey, let's just fix and flip everything we can. Let's run this property management business. Let's think about starting more businesses because ultimately, the more revenue that we can generate, more money that we can generate, we'd love to dump it back into real estate. But right now, that just can't be the focus.
Yeah. And okay. So that is the growth piece.
Mm-hmm.
You enter the mentorship to learn how to build the portfolio. You start to build the portfolio and you go, oh, I need to learn how to make active income.
Mm-hmm.
Start the active income piece and you recognize I need to own businesses, whether
Mm-hmm.
I'm buying them or building them. But buying them is a lot easier, especially if I know how to operate them as an owner rather than as in the business.
Mm-hmm.
So it's crazy because I feel like a small group of people that I'm affiliated with right now, we've all gotten there at the exact same place. And we're going, the biggest problem we need to have is where to divert our business net profit and
Mm-hmm.
pour it back into real estate instead of this FOMO uphill climb, salmon in a stream going, I need more properties. I need more. I need more. No, you don't.
Yeah. Why do you need more properties?
It's
Why?
not about the number of doors, dude. It's about
Mm-hmm.
why did we get into this? We got into this to create more security for our families, spend more time with our young children, have more flexibility in our lives. You want to come to NorCal for a month? Great, no problem. You don't have to think twice about it. It's like that's why we got into this. It's not about
Yes.
taking down 75,000 freaking doors. It's about learning how to create active income, hold profit margins, streamline processes and systems operate like it's about business.
Yep.
Isn't that like the craziest thing? Like a
It's
full
it's
circle.
it's so funny how so many people go through it though too. To your point on that, like I was watching Kevin Show this past year, and I love Kevin Show, good friend of mine. But I was watching him be like, "I'm going to buy 100 rentals this year," and I was like, "You
Yep.
probably will. You probably will, um, but you're probably not going to like it. Like that's let's see." And then of course, like literally when we're in Montana, Kevin calls me and he's like, "I think I'm going to sell all the rentals," and I was
Yep.
like, "I think that's a fantastic decision if somebody's going to pay you for all of them. I think that is such a good move for you. Like."
Wow.
Focus on the active income and then go and get the rentals. Like this is a place to park your cash to build long-term wealth. Like don't look at it as something that's going to free you up from everything right now because it's just not. Like it just takes time and that's okay.
Yeah. And not only that, but when you're on that biting down, like eating down door thing, you are also creating potentially serious financial problems for yourself if you aren't set up to support when like last year, I mean, I got a midterm rental. I got into sub two because I had a high income problem and I needed to divert my money. I had a K1 every year. I owned a business, right? I was like,
Mhm.
I got to do something with K1. And so got into a situation. We talked about it on the podcast. I'm not going to go there. But the point is it stood vacant for almost 6 months.
Oh my gosh.
It was like a $4,500 carry. And I'm sitting there going, this is bullshit.
Yeah.
This is not what I thought it was going to be. And granted, there were many reasons why that was. It was a big lesson for me, but God forbid I had 15 properties
and the HVAC goes out on one, the pipes burst on another, another one is flooded. Airbnb gets destroyed this one. And like, this is the game. If what you
Mhm.
want is to own doors, this is the business model regardless. But if what you want is to learn how to accumulate and manage wealth, this is just a part of it.
It's
Yep.
It's
just a piece of it. It's
it's
just a
just
piece of it.
choice.
Don't tie your identity to anything is the way that I always look at it too. I'm like, I have to be malleable. I have to be able to pivot. I have to be able to do different things. So I thought I was going to be this guy that had this huge rental portfolio because that's what everything's preached as. And I had to get that identity out of the way. Same thing when it came to owning businesses. Like, I try not to have an identity attached to anything because this is all temporary regardless. Like, I'm eventually going to sell the rentals that I do own at some point in time and probably upgrade them to something bigger and better that has a better ROI, or spread that cash out. But at the end of the day, like, I can't just tie my identity to one thing and say that's how it's going to work. Like, you have to be willing to pivot and recognize those things. Like, oh, maybe this isn't working. Like, I don't need any more rental properties right now. I'm perfectly fine with that. People bring me awesome deals all the time, and I'm like, gosh, that's such a great rental opportunity that I don't need. Like, I just don't need it right now. But thank you.
Yeah. I mean, that's to a freaking T. Like where I was truthfully um, heading into the sub two mentorship. I mean, I had 4 short-term rental properties. I developed a short-term rental consulting company out of it. I was going to be the short-term rental guy. I tied my identity to that. Like if you would have looked across all my socials, it would have been like, that's who's going to be, because Airbnbs make great money. I had great properties
Mhm.
that are furnished, adequately, and have great amenities, and all of them do over 100K gross a year. So like I have this proof of concept, and like I'm tying my identity to that, and I want to buy 1,000 Airbnbs. And case in point, even just this summer alone, the summer in Arizona is miserable. And so
Mhm.
when it's miserable, people don't travel here. Airbnbs are reliant upon tourism and travel for the most part. And so a lot of my properties for weeks at a time would sit vacant. I had a property sit vacant for an entire 3 months over this summer, a midterm.
Mhm.
And so you do that at scale across seasonalities. I know Kevin Cho too experienced that too, because a lot of his midterm rentals were focused in Phoenix, Scottsdale, and he just got sick of it. It's just making mortgage payments and mortgage payments and mortgage payments and repairs and all these different things. Um, and so it's so spot on in that being around people like you allowed me to see what was sitting right here in front of me, that I need to look around and get past that identity and get past those things, that I don't need to be the guy that owns the 50 Airbnbs, because owning that is owning 50 headaches and
Yep.
owning all these different things that can come along with that. And so, I mean, I've went through an entire evolution as we sit here right now. Like Daniela and I are building out a self-storage acquisition in business, and all those different things to be able to purchase a self-storage business, exit in a couple of years, and sell it as a multiple, and all these different things. And 2 years ago, me wouldn't have even thought of considering doing that. I was going to be Airbnb guy. And
Yeah.
so for you, okay, so you're starting to do these things, and you purchase these rentals, you sell a couple off, and now you're at 17 ish. And so your primary active income right now it's twofold. One is your fix and flip business. And
Yep.
then secondly, I guess, where in the process did the property management company that you own come about? And I assume that that's part of the active income stream as well.
Yeah, that is a piece of the active income stream. I'm not paying myself a lot from that business. It's more so just trying to grow that business as fast as possible. So if I can take a
Yeah.
little bit of owner distribution, a couple $1,000, that's cool. Like, I'm constantly doing stuff for that business and trying to grow it out. But the primary one is going to be the fix and flips. Those give us the biggest hits. Sometimes we get stuff from a BRRRR deal. Like, I just did a cash out refinance on a BRRRR that I got $153,000 out on, which was really cool. So sometimes I get money from those avenues, of course. And then we have, property management, which the whole purpose of the property management business, I actually was talking to Drew, my partner in the property management business. He's my best friend, known him for 10 years, and he was a property manager. So as soon as I started getting properties, I was throwing them all over to him saying, hey, will you manage this? Will you manage this? Will you manage this? And then it eventually came to a point in time where I was like, dude, we should just have our own property management business. And he gives me a call at the very, very beginning of 2023 and is like, hey, I quit my property management business that I was working for. Let's talk about this. Let's get our own thing going. So that's exactly what we did. And we just pushed it to scale it out as quickly as possible. It just seemed like the right vertical. I'm really interested in business models that have monthly reoccurring revenue. And I was noticing even on the months that I was performing bad, when it came to my Airbnbs, my short-term rentals, my midterm rentals, my long-term rentals, whatever the case was, I was taking hits when it came to repairs and stuff like that, but it never impacted what the property manager was making. Like maybe it wasn't as much money, but they were still making their money that they needed to make every single month for managing the property. And I was like, man, I got to get on the other side of that as well, too, because it just makes sense because I'm wanting to build up this rental portfolio. It puts me in the room with more landlords. Plus, I get that consistency as well. And eventually, I mean, we did this with an exit in mind as well, too. We want to scale this out to a certain level and then eventually sell it off.
That is the next level play. Having multiple businesses in the same class and bundling to private equity. I mean, it's
Yes,
so funny. I hate that. I hate this because this is so much fun. Like it really is though. It's just the progression that you make through every level of learning how to, one, what works for you, what works for your family, what makes sense, and all of these moments of enlightenment. And that's what it really is. And when you have
Mhm.
friends and family and partners that support you and getting to like experience that joy together, that was the allure of joining the mentorship.
Totally.
Have this dream and you're going, if I buy into this mentorship, it's either going to be the worst decision ever because I'm just going to flush the money down the toilet, or maybe my life can really look like that. And now your life really looks like that.
Oh, totally. And it's so interesting to look back and think about and watch. But the biggest piece of advice I always give people when they are looking to do this stuff, because a lot of us come to that same realization. I think we've hit that on the head there of like, oh, I can't have all these rentals without more active income. Um, the big thing there on that, oh my gosh, I lost my train of thought. The big thing there was that we wanted to make sure that we were writing chapters in the same book was a big thing for us. So I always tell people, I'm like, when you're looking to start a business or when you're looking to buy a business or whatever the case may be, you should have some form of experience running a business if you're going to start buying businesses. That's why I started a property management business and did not buy a property management business. And there's been a
Mhm.
lot of learning curve on how to run a business, how to manage employees, how to do this from the ground up. Had I just bought something, it probably would have failed. But I go start with something that's in the same book, just a different chapter. So I was in the book of real estate. I bought rentals. So chapter 2 can be then at that point property management. Chapter 3 then eventually can start getting into home services and that kind of stuff. Everything that is surrounded with real estate, just different chapter in the book, but they at least all feed into each other. Like 17 rentals, Drew managing that gives Drew a paycheck every single month. So cool. Now he gets to be paid and we can build this property management business together. Now the property management business is at a point where, I mean, our vendors, I'd say bi-monthly, we're paying out like $200,000 a month right now, just because of the volume of properties that we're managing. So I'm like, cool. Now I know I can go buy home service businesses and I know that they already have a place
Yes.
where they're going to be getting consistent income. So we don't have to stress about that. Every business that surrounds this business already has a baseline so that I don't have to worry about that one failing. Like they just kind of keep building off of each other and playing into each other.
I really love the from property management to home service because I'm sitting there going, you need an HVAC company in Arizona.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh my
Those
gosh.
just become recruiting businesses is the hard part though too. So but that's something that we have in the works right now is starting up our maintenance business and making sure that that's just its own separate entity through property management and eventually just building out home service businesses within there.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I'm so happy that I finally got to hear your whole story and learn about your lovely wife. I can't wait to meet her in person one day.
Yes. We should
Um,
all go to Northern California though if we're going to go anywhere to visit. So I'm down for that.
well, I'm here. I'm here.
Yeah, she
So
doesn't leave there. She doesn't leave that little bubble up there. She's in her own little bubble.
Why would you?
I am. Well, see, it's so funny because there's benefits and right advantages and
Yeah.
disadvantages to everything. But yeah. So okay, Stephen, how do people get a hold of you? If they well, first of all, before how do people get a hold of you? If you were starting over, what's one piece of advice you would give yourself?
Oh man. My piece of advice would be focus on active income. Figure out ways to make active income in your businesses before you start trying to put all of your money and all of your time into rental properties. It's not what everybody talks about. Focus on the active income and know where you're trying to go. Don't let your ego get involved in any of the decisions you're making. Make the right decisions for you, not the right decisions for the image that you're trying to portray.
Bingo.
Beautiful. And how do people get in touch with you?
Follow me on Instagram, hit me up on Instagram, shoot me a DM at Stephen Hunt, STEVENHUNT. That is where I'm going to be the most responsive. Text messages, I get like 300 of them a day from who knows where. So I take a little bit longer to get back to those. And I usually do it at the end of the night or every other day. So I would always say Instagram is just the best way to get a hold of me.
Perfect. Awesome, Stephen. Thank you for your time, man. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us for an hour. I feel like we could do a part 2 and we could talk about your first position HELOCs and what you're doing there. I know you've been talking
all the
about
strategies. I love talking strategy.
And so we can talk about those things, but
yeah, I want to hear about that heady strategy.
We'll do another one.
Perfect. Let's do it. Thank you guys so much for having me. Yeah, this has been fantastic, and glad we got everything from how we got started, where we're going, out on the table. And I'd love to, eventually do a part 2 where we can break down strategies of how do you scale these out quickly and how do you be efficient and how do we get to where we're trying to go quicker.
Awesome.
Sounds great. Everybody, thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.